Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. Please come forward and have a seat, all of you. We are going to have our last day of proceedings. Thank you for those of you, those brave people here on a Saturday morning. We have 5 speakers this morning, so it's going to be quite intense. We are going to start immediately. I will ask speakers to come forward to make sure that we don't waste any time between the speakers' interventions. Our friends, the interpreters, have requested that the speakers speak slowly to make their work easier and slower. We are going to start immediately listening to Madame Baum. She's the Secretary General of ERI, European Route of Industrial Heritage, which started as a project with the support of the European Commission. This project is now recognized as a cultural route by the Council of Europe, and if I remember correctly, you received a prize for best practices for this cultural route, so congratulations. I now give you the floor. Thank you very much indeed, Ghislaine. Does it work? Yes, okay.
My presentation in English. Sorry, my French is not so perfect. My name is Christiane Baum, and today I think I have 2 hats on. I'm on the one hand Secretary General of the European Route of Industrial Heritage, but my professional background is being a tourism expert and working as a tourism consultant. That's why I brought you some assumptions, some theses about cultural tourism, which I would like to underline with examples from our European network. For those of you who do not know what ERI is, we are the tourism network for industrial heritage tourism. We are an association located in Germany. We have more than 300 active members in 28 countries. And as Ghislaine said, since 2019, we are also a cultural route of the Council of Europe. We have a very comprehensive website with more than 2,000 sites on our website. We have biographies, we have histories. I don't want to go too much into detail. We have we have a system of so-called anchor points. GrandHornu is one of them, and also regional routes. I think you can have maybe a look at our website and get an idea of what we are doing and who we are. Since a couple of years, we are funded by the Creative Europe program for European networks. And our current project, which started in January 2022, is called Protecting and Promoting European Industrial Heritage in a Changing World. And how did we define this changing world that we are looking at the moment? We identified, and I'm sure you know as well as I do, some major challenges which we'd like to address in our project. It's of course the question of climate change, the digitalization, the crisis we are facing through pandemic and war, but also, and this is a little bit the backbone of my speech today, the generation change we face. And for this point, we see 2 aspects. On the one hand, our audiences are getting younger, and we need to find new ways to address these audiences. Because they don't have the same links to industrial history and heritage as the former generations had. They were former workers, they had practical experience, they knew the processes still in work, but younger generations, as we already heard yesterday, have a different appreciation and also have a critical view on industrialization being one of the causes of the climate change and having no personal links. So this backwards interpretation that was used for industrial heritage for many years, explaining the history and conserving and protecting machines and buildings, does not seem enough for this generation. The second component of this generation change we see is in the staff at the industrial heritage sites. The first generation of people who invented industrial heritage museums as a new topic. I'm sorry, I just stopped. Whoops. The first generation retires slowly, so we need to make sure that we have succession planning on the one hand, but also knowledge transfer on the other hand, because also the knowledge about how to maintain and operate machines will disappear with this generation. So the title of this conference is Sharing Our Industrial Memory, and the question for me is how can we do this and how can we reach these outside audience but also the professional audiences. I brought you some assumptions, some theses, and I would like to underline them a little bit with examples from our European network. The first assumption I have for cultural tourism is cultural tourism needs to trigger feelings and emotions. In further times, it was enough to provide information, to tell the history, but nowadays, I think this is not sufficient anymore. People need to be really attracted by their heart, not only by their brain. So only cultural experiences that can trigger feelings can help to address people and to tell your stories. I think this phrase of edutainment was created years ago, but now I think the focus is even more on entertainment, at least to attract the people in a first step, and then on education. A good example for me is an exhibition that was going on last year. It was called Future 21, and it was a common project of the Rhenish and Westphalian Industrial Museums in Germany. And 16 sites were interpreted by contemporary artists. And it was very interesting to see the exhibitions because there was not much content. It was a very visual thing to see. And from my impression, the biggest target groups were photographers who saw this. You see here, for example, the Peter Behrens building in Oberhausen, which was illuminated by a Dutch artist. And it was like water that was with presenters and light around the building. It was very impressive, but not as text and explanation about the history of the Peter Behrens building. The same thing happened at the Kolleritz-Holland, which you see on the right picture. So I think especially for publicly driven museums like the two project managers of this exhibition, it was an interesting approach for me. My second assumption is cultural reception is changing massively. In former times, most of the museum had glass cases, a lot of texts, some pictures, and it was all about delivery of content. People were expected to read the text and to look at exhibits. I don't tell you news when I tell you these analog exhibitions are not a success model anymore. And digitalization has found or is still finding its way in exhibitions and museums. But the trend, I think, is that people are not reading, and some of them, I think, are not even able to read more than some lines of text. So what we see in social media, the formats get shorter and shorter. We look at the reels at Instagram, we look at podcasts, everything is perceived by these small little devices instead of with your eyes and your brain. So the formats people are used to get shorter and shorter. In Germany we call this snack content that you have to provide. And of course you can provide further information later, but for the first attraction This is snack content, a little bit like fast food. It's fast and small, and it's a little bit to go. We saw a nice example during our annual conference in Esch-sur-Alzette in October. It's a podcast done by a group of young people, and it's explaining the Minette region, which is the local regional route. And they have a very funny approach because they have elements like a jingle, they have a quiz, and it's very nicely done. There's short information, fun facts, and not too much content in it. It's very successful, despite the fact it's in Luxembourg language, so the target group is not so huge. And I think this was the main criticism. During the pandemic, we asked our members who is active in digital offers, and at the beginning, the list was really, really short. After having 2 years, almost 3 years of pandemics, we have a long linked list of virtual exhibitions, virtual tours, augmented reality, and other digital content, apps, etc. You might have a look at it if you are interested in it. And what we also discovered, a big advantage of these virtual offers is that you can make sites accessible which are not normally open to the public. For example, colleagues from Berlin, they are called Berlin Underground, Berliner Unterwelten, and they offer tours, virtual tours to sites which you cannot access as a tourist in person because it's not open, it's not secure. So I think it's also not even a first appetizer, but it's also a good chance to make sites accessible. Another important point, my assumption number 3, is cultural offers are becoming stages for visitors' self-staging and self-experience. I think with the invention of a smartphone where you could turn around your camera and picture yourself in front of no matter what, this trend really started. I was at a conference last year and the trend researchers stated events are the new status symbol. And I went home and thought about it, and I thought he's totally right. Because whatever you see, people go to a museum, go to a cultural event, and what do they make out of it? A WhatsApp status, an Instagram story, a Facebook post. And it seems to be you're only appreciated when you have really staged yourself in front of the cultural event. So what is the recommendation for the museums? From our point of view, it's very interesting to identify photo points. I mean, this is the best marketing you can ever have. If people photograph your site and others, ask them, where have you been? How was it there? So these are your promoters and ambassadors. Also the hands-on experiences, to do things yourself, experience yourself, touch things, are, I think, a very good experience, and people like to stage themselves while they are doing crafts or if they can, little things. So we see many of our sites who do this, and I think this is an easy, at least the photo points, is easy to implement way. This self-staging is also a basis of our dance event, Work It Out. We are doing since 5 years a dance event, Work It Out, where we provide a choreography and hip-hop music, and kids and teenagers dance at European sites around the world, and then they promote their videos and post it. So the idea behind this, we thought, what do they want? They like music, they like dance, they like videos and photos, and they like posting themselves in the situations. So this is the success story of this event, which won the prize of the best practices of the cultural roots now in October. The cultural content, my assumption number 4, cultural content is always the basis of cultural tourism, but in competition, criteria and added values are now other criteria and added values are often decisive. That means the customer decision is not necessarily based on the cultural offer. So we need to have other benefits. And I think it's no news that people like to eat and drink. So whenever we have sites which provide a restaurant, it's very nice and it's a success factor. But also, you see here a picture, for example, up there from Manufaktum. This is a German store. And they have regional products, and they sell their regional products in an old, they have their main headquarters in an old coking plant, and they sell their cheese and their sausages and other regional products in it. And I think this is also a good idea. Also the combination with shopping and other things. I know it's not so popular, but it still might be a good additional attraction to the industrial sites. Therefore, we see that many sites increase their visitor numbers with it. Assumption number 5, visitors decide on a trip or a visit for a wide variety of reasons. It is not the cultural theme alone that decides. So that means we can attract visitors who have different motives to travel. So it doesn't really matter why they come, but when they are here, you can still tell them your stories. And a quite good approach, I think, is cycling. Cycling, I think, is very popular, probably also in your countries. And in Germany, 2 of the routes we represent, the Ruhr area and the Berlin route, have created cycling routes on industrial heritage. For example, one of the Berlin routes is called Warm Light and Cold Beer, and it combines a very nice offer of culinary inventions and industrial heritage. So I think this is also a good idea to look around and see what other tourism offers you have in the region. Fun fact about Ferropolis, also a site in Germany, sorry for being a little bit German. Ferropolis is a large open cast mining from the lignite, and they are among industrial heritage known for their festivals. And during the pandemic, camping became very popular in Germany, and everybody wanted to go to the coast of the Baltic Sea because only national travel was allowed. But the coast of the Baltic Sea suffered from over-tourism, so it was closed for visitors, and people stopped on their way. And as Ferropolis is a festival stage also, they had the infrastructure, toilets and showers, and they have a lake there from the mining. So by hazard, they became the largest camping place in the area. So never a target group they thought of, but now an important part of their business. Assumption number 6, you need to know your target group and their customer journey. I think what is important is really to need to know who are the people who come to. And I think a good example of this is in the rural area, they are working with the Sinus milieus, and they make like set cards of their Sinus milieu. One of the most important milieu is the expeditive milieu for them, and they really describe their expectations, their hobbies, their values, their ideas, the customer journey, how do they get their information, where, when, and where from. And I think this is a good hint. Do not think about what you want to sell, but think about what they want to buy. Because often we have the idea that we want to sell and promote something, but this is not how our target groups react. So my last assumption, number 7, people want to get involved and be part of it. Being behind the scenes, I think, is a very big advantage of industrial heritage. You see here the show depot of the World Heritage Site Zollverein in Essen, which was opened, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. But giving these insights behind the scenes, I think, is a very interesting opportunity for tourists in industrial heritage. So this being involved, being part of it, feeling home, feeling part of the local population is really a big trend. And as I said, we also see a second target group, which is the target group of the professional level in this generation change. This is why I brought you also 2 examples of how we could maybe attract young people to work in industrial heritage. One of this is from colleagues in the UK. It's called World Heritage Ambassadors, and it is a program where they brought 200 kids and teenagers to industrial sites and make them really work as young volunteers at the sites. I think it's very interesting, and I think this is a good example that you really can get people involved, that you can increase their identity with the site and ask them to become active. And now most of them have become long-term volunteers at the sites. And we had an own program with colleagues from Berlin. Last year we started, it was called Study and Work Camp, where we invited, I think, 15 students from, I don't know how many countries, people aged between 17 and 26. And for 2 weeks they could experience sites, could discuss, and also had some practical work for renovation, restoration. And it was really appreciated, and we will continue this activity. So my conclusion is the changing world presents us with many challenges, but at the same time it gives us also many opportunities to share our industrial heritage. And as far as I can see, and also as I've seen in yesterday's presentations, most of you are already on a very good way to face these challenges, so I'm very optimistic for the future of industrial heritage. Thank you very much.